Welcome back to another tips video. Today we have 7 tips for Lords of Xulima that should help new players be able to enjoy the game more. The first tip has to do with leveling up your character. The skills and abilities your characters have in the game, there's a lot of choices. And you cannot, no matter what you do, you won't be able to get all of them. So you really have to pick and choose and kind of plan as you go. So we have a level 50 cleric here. That's pretty high level in this game, like nearing the end of the game at this point. If we double click on him to bring up his character sheet, if you look over here, there's these buttons. You can look at his current skills, and you can see some skills like his weapons, polearms, maces, and hammers. I put like no points in, nothing into armor. If we go into his other skills, you can see he's got a lot of skills though leveled up. Not all of them are fully leveled up. The thing is, this isn't all his skills. You might be thinking, oh, well, he's got a lot of skills. He's looking pretty good. If we click here to level him up, you can see he's got even more skills available. All these ones that have no number by them, I haven't even started. I don't have Dispel, Remove Poison, Mass Stun Relieve. All these skills I don't have. Mind you, I'm at the end of the game. Maybe I'm going to get a few more level ups at best. I've never taken bodybuilding immunity. A lot of these skills can go up to level 30. They're extremely high, expensive. I mean, it's something you just have to get over and realize, and you have to decide what you want from a character. So, and as you're going, as you can see, my character has lots of choices available. All these don't show up. Like new skills like Divine Healing, it opens up as you're playing the game. I don't remember what level, but it's a high level ability. So this won't even show up for you to purchase until you're at whatever level it opens up. Maybe it was level 40. I don't remember at this point. The point being that you want to pick skills you think you can use, put points into it, and focus on a few skills. Just realize you can't take them all. You have to pick and choose. So just try to focus on that. If you really want to plan ahead, I would recommend just going online and looking up the skills for whatever class you have, so maybe you can plan ahead. As you can see, maybe you can max out a third of them on some characters. Something like the Barbarian, who has very skill light, you might be able to max out, more than half of them. But someone skill heavy, like most of your casters, you gotta pick and choose. The second thing for leveling up is the speed stat. You may think, oh, it's important, but I don't need to do it every time. Wrong. Every time you level up, you must put a point into the speed stat. But you get to pick 2 attributes every time you level up. 1 into speed, and then 1 into a very primary attribute. Like, for instance, a cleric, it's probably going to be energy. If we were the barbarian, maybe we go speed and then strength, and next time speed and then constitution, for instance. Like, 1 point needs to go into speed every time. Speed affects how many times you get to act in combat. So if your speed is much faster than an enemy, you may be able to take 2-3 attacks before they even get to go once. So it's an extremely important skill. If you don't level it up later in the game, your enemies will be attacking you 2 or 3 times before you get to act, and you'll be miserable and you'll hate the game, frankly. It's very important. Please do it. Please always put a point into speed. If you don't, you'll regret it near the end of the game. Something I came to realize, I just want to add on to the end of this one, is that you can only put 1 point into a skill per level. So even though I've got 6 skill points, it says here, and it says axes only costs 1, I can't decide right now. Well, I want my axe skill to be higher. The best I can do is increase it by 1 skill point. That's it. I can't increase the skill any higher than 1 level every time you level up, which is another reason why it's important to plan ahead, because you can't decide at level 50, you know what, I haven't been putting points into axes, but I'd like it to be at level 30 now. Even if somehow you add 100 skill points here, you still can't max out axes. At best, you can buy 1 point in it. That's something to consider, and another reason to kind of plan out ahead of time which skills you want so you can constantly be putting points in. As I said, a lot of points have 30 levels, which means it's going to take you 30 level ups to max out that skill, unless you get lucky and find something like a skill book that gives you a skill point. Well, those are rare. Tip number 2 has to do with training skills. Just like we were talking about in our previous one where you can't get all abilities, it's extremely important to train abilities. Every town will have a guy that's an instructor. Not only does he give you side quests you can do for extra gold and XP,
Greetings, stranger.
but they always have a section that says, I'd like to improve my abilities. By clicking on that, you can spend gold, and when you spend this, so for instance, this is end game, which is why it's so expensive. But at end game, if you spend 36,000 right now, it will give 1 skill point to everybody. But early in the game, it's pretty cheap. So every time you click on this button, it will give 1 skill point to every party member, not just one of them. And every time you use this button, the price goes up. So at the beginning, I don't remember what it is. It's like 100. Next time it'll be 200, 500, then 1,000, and so on. Every time you click the button, the price goes up. But it's completely worth it, and it's one of the main things you'll use gold for in the game. Pretty much after your first couple of levels at the beginning of the game, you want to try to go to the trainer and buy a skill point for everybody every level up. Like, you don't really want to skip one because you need those skill points. They're so valuable because, as we said in the first one, you can't get every skill. This really helps to alleviate that problem by buying constantly. This is one of the main things you're going to use your gold for. Tip 3 is don't buy food. Even though there's a food merchant in every town, you don't really want to buy it. Everywhere along the map, you'll see stuff like this, bushes, trees that all have food on them, and you can just click and collect it, and you'll see your food goes up. And that's really how you want to get your food. And if you go over this, once you collect it, if you go over it, most food, as you can see here, it says growth rate, 3 days. If we come back in 3 days, this food will be back. So something you can do early in the game is after you beat Prince Nengorth in his castle in Nabros, this area here of Nabros and Velengarn, you can do what I like to call a food loop. So once you clear Prince Nengorth out, you can go around and pretty much in a circle here and in Velengarn, and you should be able to collect enough food from bushes and trees and plants to get your food up to 6 days of food. And then what you can do is, when you get low on food, come back here, do another loop, get yourself back up to 6 days of food, and just keep repeating that. It will save you a lot of money, and it will keep your food stocks up, which means if you ever need to rest for any reason, you can rest without worrying about, man, I'm going to have to keep buying food, it's costing me a lot of gold, because resting is very important in the game, but it can be costly in food costs if you're buying food. So just find a spot you feel comfortable in, that you know where there's a lot of food, and just come back there constantly to get food is the best way to do it, so you can save that gold for gear and skill points, which are more important. Tip 4 is about the clear area bonus. So every area in the game, and not just the map area, but every area, so even though this is a whole map area here for Devonia, it's split into multiple areas, and it can be hard sometimes to see it. Like this area here and this area up here might be separate areas, and this area over here might be a separate area. So sometimes it's hard to tell. But the easiest way to know if you're in an area that has wandering monsters is to go over this little orb right over here. If you go over it, it says enemy presence, and it says you track the presence of a few enemies. And it'll know few enemies means there's only a few wandering packs of monsters. A great number means there's a lot. And if you have, it says none, you won't encounter any wandering monsters in the area that you're in. So this is a good way to keep up with XP and gold, is to wander an area and collect the money and the gold. Now you can see up here it says we just left the southern ruins area, and if we go over the orb now, no signs of enemy. So right here, I will get no random encounters. All the enemies have been cleared. If I go back over here, you'll see entering southern ancient ruins, and all of a sudden, a few enemies are roaming about. This orb also changes color. It's kind of a white color if there's no enemies, yellow if there's a few, and red if there's a lot. Shown here is an example of what happens if you clear an area completely of monsters. As shown here, I got a bonus 3000 XP for clearing this section of the map. You can get this in most sections of the game. Something to keep in mind is that if this orb goes the whitish color as it is now, showing there's no more wandering monsters and you don't get the bonus, that means somewhere on the map there's probably a pre-placed army. Some of the ones where you can see the monsters on the map and they're not just wandering random encounters. So you do need to get those off the map also in order to get this bonus. I would definitely go through the work in many areas to do this, just because the extra XP and the extra gold really comes in handy. Tip 5 is about the Help an Ally skill, which isn't very obvious, and many people might not realize it's there. So if you go up here or Move Character, you'll see a button that says Help an Ally. And this helps to remove certain things like being frozen, burning, and tangled. So how it works is if I click on this, right now our Barbarian is selected. If you click on that, anyone that is touching this character, you can beat the flames off of them. So for instance, our Wizard here, or our Bard, if we click on them, it removed the burning effect on that character, but it also used their turn. So it can be useful in some situations. A lot of times it's very useful for caster types if they run out of mana, because it allows them to still do something useful on their turn. Something to keep in mind though is that this ability does not work on themselves. Our cleric here cannot beat the flames off of himself. And as you can see, he cannot reach the people over here. These abilities only work on the characters right next to them. This also applies to things like, for instance, our Bard here sings a Bard song. It will only affect the people next to him, which is why the Bard or a Paladin with an aura skill, you want them all to be in the middle so that they can hit everybody. If you put them in a corner, they'll only hit the people next to them. So it's something important to keep in mind as well. Tip 6. Traveling and resting. So we're here in Devonia, which is an endgame town. It's pretty late in the game. You go here. If we go here to rest at the inn, you can see to rest in the inn is 550 or 1100 gold. Extremely expensive.
See you soon.
So just remember that for a moment. The second part of this tip is you should always have travel crystals on you. They are extremely valuable. Just get out of Dodge. By double clicking on one, it instantly transports you to that town. So if you get in somewhere where you realize, oh, the enemies are too tough, the random encounters are too tough, you maybe take a lot of damage, curse damage, things you can't get rid of, especially early in the game and you're stuck, you have no food, you're dying, bam, travel crystal, and you escape, and ta-da, I'm in Velengarn and I'm safe, I can rest, I can heal up. Now the reason I pointed out the guy in Devonia was, if we go to this innkeeper in Velengarn, look at this, the same thing, 8 hours in a full day costs 36 and 72, a massive gold savings. So if you need to rest in an inn, which generally you shouldn't need to, you should just be resting, with your tent, and then doing a food loop if you run out of food. But if you need to go to an inn, it's extremely cheap. Velengarn is this cheap the whole game. Even though we're at endgame, it's still this expensive, and Devonia, extremely expensive. Save your money, travel back to Velengarn. By this point in the game, you'll have all the portals connected. You can easily travel here.
See you soon.
And buying the travel crystals, you want to buy those, because all of the merchants, all of them sell one for their town,
How can I help you?
and they're extremely cheap. Like, they're not that expensive. Like, how much is this one? Velengarn travel crystal costs 330. That is totally worth it if you end up in a bad spot, because this is a tough game, and you can end up in spots where, oh, these are hard monsters, I can't beat them, and I can't get away. So make sure you have a crystal on you at all times. I prefer Velengarn myself because it tends to be a very cheap one, and like I said, things like the inn are very cheap if you decide you do need to rest. Another thing to realize is, even though, like, sometimes let's say this thing is red right now, showing that there's a lot of enemies around, as long as this campfire button is not grayed out, you can rest with no fear. Resting with the campfire button does not trigger random encounters like it does in other games. So you can rest anywhere as long as it lets you. If the game thinks there's enemies too close to you, it will gray this button out and just not let you click on it. If the game lets you click on it, you can rest without fear of getting a random encounter. Tip 7 is an old one. Save often. This is a tough game. You can accidentally go into areas you weren't expecting to be so difficult. Some areas have monsters that are difficult, along with easy monsters. It's just an old school game where it doesn't hold your hand and you can end up in situations you didn't expect. F5 quick saves your game, and F8 quick loads your game. So just muscle memory F5, just F5 every once in a while. Because if you end up in a bad situation, you don't want to have to redo everything in the game. And that's the last tip. I hope that helps you guys. If you have any questions or anything I didn't cover that you're wondering about, let me know in the comments section and I'll try to answer it for you. I have beaten this game before on Old School Veterans, so I think I mostly know how to beat most stuff. If you have any questions or thoughts, let me know down below. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button, and I hope to see you for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.